Welcome back to the Blood Prison Shakedown, and we got a special guest today, and we're just into 2024, and we have got Ben Armstrong from Netherworld. Ben, how you doing today, man?
Doing great.
Doing great. How was your 2023 season up down in Atlanta there? Well, you're in Stone Mountain, right?
It's pretty much Atlanta. It was good. It was a weird season. Um, that's why it's really interesting with things like Legendary Haunt Tour. When the season ends, you got to talk to all these people and kind of get a sense of what was going on. But we had a pretty good weather season. Um, but it was just a little bit soft right at the beginning as far as attendance goes. Not terrible, but it was like, this is a little weird. But it picked up really well at the end. So overall, it was a very good season for us.
Well, that's good. Glad to hear that. Yeah, I knew we were down a little bit up here, and the weather was good until we hit those big peak weekends. Once we hit those weekends, we had rain. I think both Fridays and Saturdays, and the last weekend the same way. So it got pretty nuts up here. Um, I got a ton of questions for you. I mean, I appreciate you doing this.
Oh, no problem.
So I was curious. I've never actually been to Netherworld. It's on the list. I've been trying to get down there. You guys don't do off-season events, is that correct?
Well, it depends. I mean, these days we don't. We've experimented with a lot of them, but I don't know. For us, we're very highly attended attraction during the season. I mean, a lot of people come to see us, and so with these off-season events, you start putting a lot of money and effort into it. You got to really pump it up with a lot of marketing to kind of change the thinking of people. And some of unless you invest in them heavily on all levels, it's kind of, I don't know, it just kind of puts us back in time. Like we spend weeks working on Christmas, and then we do Christmas, then we spend weeks tearing down from Christmas. We change so much about the attraction. It's just like we just lost time. So we've covered payroll, we've made some money, but all in all, we've kind of gotten to the point where we feel like we'd rather just do the season. And our season is quite long. I mean, I think it varies, but a lot of years we're doing 36 nights of operation, and that's a lot of nights. So it's it's good to be over with. We do some things like we'll occasionally do like behind the scenes events these days, maybe one day, things like that. But we always talk about it, and people really love the off season shows, particularly Christmas, and our staff and customers are always asking about it. I don't think we take it completely away. I mean, in the right circumstance, we might do it again, but for now, we're just doing the main show.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, I definitely want to get down there and check that out. The so curiosity on a lot of this for me is where it all started. Where did this start for you? I mean, I'm not sure the exact year you guys opened Netherworld, but where did it start for you? How did you know, or did you know growing up? Yeah, this is what I'm doing. I'm gonna do a haunted attraction of some sort. I'm gonna be in some sort of Halloween industry. Is that how it was for you?
Well, gosh, ever since I can remember, since I was a little kid, I loved monsters. I loved everything creepy and Halloween. I was just into it. Now, horror as a thing, I'm not as into all aspects of horror. Like, I'm not really slashers and things like that. I'm not really humans on humans. I like monsters, supernatural, all that kind of stuff. The unknown. That's always been something that really excited me. And even as a kid, we'd set up little haunted house things in our car porch, and stuff like that. Uh, our family did the haunted house in my elementary school, refrigerator boxes and literally the old peel grapes. I kid you not. We did all that stuff. And the bug really bit me then. So and I'd play a monster in that all the time. I was big into like planning what trick or treating was going to be like. Come up with some crazy character that I would create. I remember I had this scarecrow one year I did, and had my whole bag of tricks of the things I was going to do. It wasn't all just about getting candy. It was about you know going out on that night, you know, would the moon be full? Would the winds blow? You know, what would it be like to be a creature roaming around in the darkness? So that was something from childhood that definitely I was into, and we even did when I was a kid. We did like it was 8 millimeter Super 8 movies, like little stop motion monster movies, and we'd shoot little movies with. This is before video. I'm an elderly person here, so it was long ago. But yeah, so all that was going on, and you know, I never would have thought that it ended up, kind of how we ended up today.
So when did what was first year for Netherworld? What was that?
So we're entering our 28th season this year, and continuously for haunted attractions. So to back up a little more, my career was in television. I was in like local TV stations, news, entertainment, things like that. I was on the production side, so that's what I did. But I did so many things. I was into Dungeons and Dragons before anyone had ever heard of it. We're talking 40 years ago. And that got me into this stuff. And then I was in a medieval recreation crew called the Society for Creative Anachronism, where it was like medieval combat. So I had a troupe. We had a troupe of actors, and so I was like, I want to do a late night horror show host at my TV station. I pitched it, and they were like, "Yeah." I couldn't believe they said okay. So I had this troupe of my friends to rely on. So we did this late night horror show hosting thing, and from that's where I did the first haunted house because I also was producing the muscular dystrophy telethon. So we're like, let's do a haunted house to raise money. So did that. And so being a late night horror show host and doing, a small haunted house in a mall, this is, a long time ago. That was where it started. So I did that for 3 years, and in television, you jump markets. So I moved from Tallahassee, Florida, to Atlanta, to a bigger station. And when I got here, I discovered, you know, real haunted houses. At the time, there was a chain. Some of you folks who've been around forever would remember Silo X. It was a chain of haunts. At one time, there were as many as 10 of them. And so I worked for one local one year, and I immediately got involved in designing for the chain of haunts. So I did that about 3 years. And the final part about that was, I mean, I'd probably still be working there, but one year they just didn't open. And so me and a bunch of the folks who did it were like, hey, let's just do our own. Let's do our own attraction. If we did, what would it be? And, did the usual write down 75 names on a napkin, and, the one that stuck was Netherworld.
So when you were doing all this stuff in the TV, and when you got into that attraction, I mean, are we talking like late '80s, '90s time frame? Is that where we're
Yeah.
looking?
So I guess we could just get out. I think I think Netherworld's first year was '97. I want to say, off the top of my head. Um, but yeah, that sounds right. So it probably was, dude, Silo X back '94. So it was the early '90s was when I was being a horror show host and doing the first haunted houses I did.
That
That's
is
right.
cool. That's really cool. So when you did, now I know you moved locations a few years back. Was it always in? Have you grown? I guess is what I'm asking. Like the first year, 1997, was that in one spot, and then oh shit, this is getting huge, and then move? How many times have you guys move locations?
Yeah, well, in the beginning, we did what most haunts did. I mean, back in the day, um, it was typical to sort of pack it all up and get out of there. So the very first year, we were in some furniture mall. I remember I probably designed that haunted house on CAD 30 times, to be under a tent, to be under all these different things. And so we didn't even have a location for our first year, but we had done all the things. We had started companies, we had raised money, I was building wall panels in my backyard, all this crazy stuff. So we got a location. We went in there. I think we were in there for just a couple of months. We had like a month to set up, a month to operate, a couple of weeks to tear it down. And well, that was the very first Netherworld, and that was kind of crazy because we didn't really have the sense of how to do this because you're always learning. You're learning, if you ever stop learning, you're toast, you know. But I remember we got U-Hauls and we would take the walls out and we rented a storage facility. It was upstairs in an old warehouse. So not only do we have to take them out, down a hall, up an old freight elevator, down a hallway, and pile them in a room for the entire haunted house. And the second time we moved, I realized, oh, you can just rent big trucks, put the stuff in, and bring the trucks back, and build it again. So we were that first year we were in that furniture place, totally different part of Atlanta. The second year we moved to the building that would become our home, but we moved out. And the third year we decided to take a year-round lease in that location. And then we moved in there and we stayed until we made our move to Stone Mountain.
That's cool. Yeah.
We were there a long time.
Yeah, I was gonna say because you moved to Stone Mountain what 3, 4 seasons ago.
I was more than that. Let's see, what was it? I want to say it was like 7 years or so. I think we had about 6 seasons there. When we moved to Stone Mountain, fortunately, we had kind of a gap year where we moved into the building. We worked on renovating the entire building to our specs, the first level of that renovation, and we built escape games there. So we came into the building, we painted the ceilings black, we did a huge amount of all the fire safety equipment, and we built these escape games in like a phase one. That was and at that time we also operated our Norcross location for its final year. So the second that we closed down that year, we packed it up. We packed up all those years of building in 22 days.
That must have been quite an undertaking.
It was a simple plan. It was like I like, okay, half the time we're taking down all the stuff. So we had every day we had trucks running, delicates and stuff like that, and we packed probably 22 tractor trailer loads as well. So we took down all the stuff, and in the midway point, it's like, okay, the stuff is out of the way. Now let's move all the construction, and we deconstructed everything. And we had so little time, we threw away only like 2 or 3 dumpster loads. We literally took all that stuff to a new location. I am still throwing away stuff from that move because a lot of it we couldn't use because we had gotten into a habit of, working with our fire marshal that all the wood we purchase is fire rated. So it's all fire rated, but we had a lot of old construction in the haunt that wasn't. Even in the old haunt, every year we would replace certain sections of walls, with the stuff. But we had tons of panels, so I saved them and we used them for outdoor, photo ops and things like that. And eventually they're all were rotting away, but so I'm still throwing away bits of our old haunted house.
What's the most important now, especially? So as far as running your attraction, I'm assuming it's actor driven, pretty much. But it seems like over the years, especially in the last 10, 15 years, animatronics have really, raised the game a little bit. Where do you throw your importance as far as that concerned? Is a animatronic more important than an actor or vice versa, or they kind of balance each other out?
So we're Netherworld is a strange place. I guess we're we're a haunted house like all haunted houses, but we're just cram full of sets, props, animations, effects, and actors. It's like I often equate it. We've ceased to become a horror movie. We're an action movie. We're not Alien. We're aliens. It's like nonstop action is kind of what it is. So we've always had, even in the early days before animations were really available, it was an interest of mine to do that kind of stuff. So I always had tons of air cannons and just things that move and motorized things and anything to distract, to shock. But it was not necessarily at the expense of actors because we wanted tons of actors too. So it's really not one or the other. It's more, and it's sort of like if one thing works, we do it 10 of them. So it's like one particular gag's working, we'll try more, and then we get into stunts, and we'll have we have tons and tons of stunts. We get into puppets. We have tons and tons of puppets. So uh, it's just a lot of our actors, because it's such a high scare situation. Sometimes people going through are not realizing what is happening to them are actors, because Netherworld is an extremely aggressive and very very loud attraction. Uh, you can't hear a lot of dialogue. There's not a lot of downtime in it. So, and our actors are just like bam, 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 bam. We're really trying to just pour on lots and lots of sensory overload. So sometimes people think that those might have been, props or animations, but they are actually actors. So it's a thick soup of all of those things.
Mhm. Yeah, that's kind of what I figured. Um, I was always, I mean, I've been in the game near as long as you, but I like actors. Like we had the most actors we've had ever this past season, and it's I'm sure in that realm of do you have enough? We struggle with that a lot because we're just in a big facility like you guys, and that is always the thing for me is I always want to have a ton of actors just because an actor's not going to pop an air cylinder or something like that and it's down for the day just kind of sitting there in the side. So I've always wondered what your perspective was on that, and doing it as long as you have. I've only been here for I don't know, since 2016. And I got a few actors I call my OGs, my OGs, my original. You got any left from that, or is it just you and the staff? How does that work? You got any actors from the early days?
Oh, well, I mean, there's a long way to the early days. We have, so we do so many things with our actors, but we started this thing with patches a couple years probably before they got popular at Transworld. So we have two kinds really of patches. One are your year patches that you get, like, okay, if you're shock scare in the main house, you begin and you work 15 nights, you're inducted into the Order of the Nightmares. So you get your nightmare patch. And it depends on what you do, what type of actor you are, as to what kind of patch you get. And there's additional patches that are like, okay, if you're a lead, you get Order of the Avatars. If you get, you can also you can say be in makeup and be an actor, so you get multiples. But we also do your year patches. So if you've been here for 5 years, you're an elder. You get your elder patch. 10 years, an ancient. 15 years, a primordial. 20 years, a megalodon. So we just added a 25-year patch that's called the trilobite. So we have people at our wrap party that were coming up to get their 25-year patches. Now, I would say there's not a whole lot of actors that have been here for 25 years, because that is quite a range of time to still be in that realm. But we do have people who have worked as actors that still will work as actors that have been here 25 years. Probably more in the 20 and 15-year range that we have that are actors, but we have people that run the gamut. And so, for example, in a given year, we will employ somewhere between 400 and 500 employees at Netherworld. So, of course, they're not all working every single night. We have so many nights of operation. I mean, there's a lot of times where we're open every night, but we back before COVID, we were often open every single night in October, every night. Um, we now take off more Mondays and a couple Tuesdays in the beginning, but it kind of shifts. Like we also go into basically mid-November on the weekends, but we also have a huge staff now of what all of our operations and front of house staff. It's grown enormous. So on a given night, there's you know more actors in front of house, but front of house is rapidly encroaching because we have the photo systems, which requires a bunch of people that we take the pictures and they buy them. We have a very large food staff. We don't outsource that. That's all done in house by us. We have a big parking staff. We have a big staff to manage our queue lines. They're rather elaborate with how we do all of our time ticketing. It's a whole system that we've kind of got how we switch paddocks to kind of organize it all. So there's a very big front of house staff as well. So yeah, a lot of people.
What? So okay, that's so. Are you still open? Like you saying, you're not open on Mondays now. So like October, are you like Wednesday through Sunday?
Well, there's nothing standard about our calendar. I mean, it's sort of like we pick up days. So I don't even remember what the calendar is because it changes so much. Of course, the last week we're open on that Monday, and we have what's called the run, where we're just open continuously through the whole time period. But I don't know. I can't remember if we have 2 Mondays that we do don't that we do, but uh, it still totals out to be a lot of days. Like I said, it's about I think it was about 36 days this season that we were open.
So on a day to day basis during Halloween season, what is Ben Armstrong doing at Netherworld? I mean, are you just upper management? Are you still getting into the bones of everything? Like, I want you to scare this way. Do you jump into character every now and again? What's your role anymore?
Good question. So I, it, it, I've always been extremely heavily involved, and I go into work every day during the year, you know, to work on a haunted house myself. Not always on the build part because there's a lot of business elements to it, of course, but and I've got a very talented year-round staff as well. I have teams that build, I have teams of artists, I have people that are working on the business side of things. So that's all going on. Of course, my business partner as well, Billy Messina. So we're all actively working on it. When the show is open, um, I guess the main thing that I do, I guess you would call it quality control. But I'll arrive, and what I do is the main thing is I'm dealing on whatever high level problem is ongoing. Like if there's something that happened that was particularly a problem, that's what I'm going to go towards. Like I like to say, if you see me, um, usually it's something that's new, something that is going great, or something that is not going great. you know, like like if the escape games. So we also have 5 escape games that are in operation. That's a whole other staff. And so if the escape games are rocking and rolling, I'm going to walk by there and say, "How's it going?" I'm going to say, "Cool," and I'm out of there. Because I got other stuff I'm doing. But on the nightly, I'll arrive. I used to actually force myself. I had to do like 75 things all around the property. It could have been plug in a light, do this thing to get set up for the day. And this would force me to walk most of the property so that my eyes were laid upon a lot of different things. And more and more, as people are growing more and more into their different roles, I have to do less and less of that. But I still try to basically go throughout the entire swath of the attraction and the midway. Like I'll often be the person I turn on the Lecos, that light the areas every day. That's part of what I do. And I do that because then I can look up and see if they're burned out. Um, I'll turn on the stuff in the midway so then I can hear that the audio is working correctly. And so I'll do all that stuff. And then it's kind of like it's a drum beat. You know how it feels. It's like things are chill. People start to come in. It starts getting busier. More's happening. It starts getting exciting. The actors start coming in, and I'll spend a lot of time upstairs with the acting staff. I'll go down and work with the operation staff and say hello. But I'll go up there, and usually we do like a little pump up thing we do um, right just before. So we have staff come in 2 different. They're about the same, but they're off by about 30 minutes in time. So the first house opens 30 minutes about before the second house. So right when the first house people are getting finished, they're about ready to go in like 20 minutes before show open. They're mainly backstage, and second house is getting in makeup and stuff. So they're all there. So at that point, we do like general announcements. This is what's happening. Some celebrity's going to come through tonight. This is the deal. What this media outlet's going to be here. So we're telling people what's up. We do like a raffle thing, like people win prizes and stuff like that. Then we do the column of destiny. We have a giant railroad tie, and someone is selected every night to hammer the nail. So it's done by seniority. It's done by who's doing great or whatever. Someone recommends them. So we give them a hammer and a nail, and they got to go up there, and everyone's watching, and we play this kind of tribal music, get people's butt, and they're hammering this nail. And of course, it's the railroad tie, and these are very dull nails because it makes for great drama. And they go half the time they go flinging across the room and embed in someone's forehead. No, usually not. Usually it doesn't stick. But anyway, we do that, and then everyone does a big cheer, and then they come charging down into the haunt, and then I'm involved with kind of getting that started, and kind of and I kind of stay at the front door, and I make sure that the haunt is ready before we open, because I never want, oh, it's not really ready, and somehow someone opened the door and people are going in. So I was kind of like, I hold the door, and we do a big shout and a yell, and everyone's excited, and then the first groups go through, and I usually will follow the first the first group, or whatever happens, and I'll start following them through the attraction to make sure. And I've got my team that's, they run ahead and get everyone pumped. They're coming, And so then the first groups go in, and then I'll follow and just kind of see what. I don't always make it through, because if I see a problem, like, why isn't this animation working, or where's this actor, and I'll like peel out and get on the radio and be calling and stuff like that. But that and I'll kind of do that until I get through the first house, because it might take a time or two, and it's about 25 minutes or so to go through it. So uh, it might be 30, 40 minutes. I'll get out into the midway, and then it's there. It's dark. I look around and make sure that everything's right. The lights, sounds, everything seems good, and then I'll usually go onto the second house and go through that one. But and once I've completed going through the haunted houses, that's when I kind of can do whatever. Usually, I'll just roam the building. I'll go around. I'll check the queue lines. I'll do different stuff. And once things are settled in, after a week or two, everything's like humming. That's when I get to act.
So you get to do that. What is your favorite in your haunt? Where's your favorite place to act? Do you have a spot, or you just like to roam?
So, from the way back, I was a big time lot actor, and I have many characters and many voices and lots of gags and interaction. I have all this stuff that I do. But in on year the first year of being in this building, we had our most serious fire alarm ever. So, you always have occasionally will have your alarms will go off because there's too much smoke or something like that, and you get it figured out and everything's cool. Well, this is our first year in the location, and it was our first really busy Saturday night. So there was a lot of people on property. There's a lot of people in the attraction, and we rehearsed for this, doing evacuations, stuff like that. So anyway, and my guy who's the guy who was our firefighter guy who was on top of that, he was actually in a remote lot dealing with some parking problems, dealing because he was basically almost out of radio contact. So the alarms go off, and it's a water flow issue. So it's not smokes. So I'm like, what the freak? That means no matter what, a sprinkler head is popped, which it's either a fire or we popped a head, which is a huge mess, right? So we have to evacuate. So we evacuated the entire building, and we actually did great. We got everyone out of there very fast. The building we have we put in so many exits. We have a massive occupancy in that building, but we have so many exits. We got the place emptied. It was great. Getting them in again, that was a nightmare. Imagine dumping, hundreds and hundreds of people out into places where there's people still in line. It was bad. But the point of this, you asked me about acting. I didn't. I don't like to be away from where I can get at the alarms and stuff. So I really haven't done intense lot acting of any sort in a long time. I don't want to be all in makeup and stuff. So what I mainly do is I just scare people, and it's super fun to scare people. So what I normally do, so I can be in the core of the show, and still on the radio and hear, I usually just wear like a Nosferatu or an orc looking mask. Like I used to just make sock masks, and now I just get these like ones from Immortal, just no neck, comfortable, you know, thick trench coat, clack gloves, sometimes a voice distorter, and a big, huge, heavy chain. And so I just go in and I find the best possible spots to just be as aggressive and impactful as possible. Like a good tight room where I can take that chain and hit the wall and make this, really loud sound, and, come at people and clack and growl and enhance and just be throw a bunch of dialogue at them and just and be really really in the path. And so I'll do that, and then some nights and every year the show changes so much. You got to hunt like a spot that was my favorite spot the previous year. Maybe the lighting's different or the flow is a little different. So I got to find new spots I like, and I'll find two or three, and I'll just kind of move from spot to spot. And honestly, I do most of my acting in the show in late October because about that's the time when you've got really huge crowds and and everyone knows all their jobs. Everything's running. Even though we're very busy, things are running very smoothly. So I'm like, okay, I can roll in 9, 10 o'clock, and we're open till midnight. And it's like I'm pumped and I'm fresh, and other people have been like they're getting tired. So I can go around and act with them, or I can just go in and go like, I'm going to scare every single person myself, and I will try. And I'll be in there until like they pull me out, like some radio call, and I'll come out. Then I'll be like, oh man, I'm kind of tired.
How many actors do you guys roll with there, in a season? Like what's a typical number?
I want to say it's funny because it varies. We're well over 100 on a given night. It will be there. So our on-site staffing is around 200, with the front of house being on the other side of 100. So, and there's the most amounts are in the main house, smaller pool in the second house, and we have a lot of outdoor lot actors. 8, 15, 20. Depending on what we're covering, because we have a big midway and we have big queue lines, so they're all over there.
Right. So over the years, it seems like the days of, I mean, they're still out there. The days of a haunted house or a haunted woods, is still here, but it's like the level seems to have raised a lot, or raised a lot. You know what I'm saying? So how has it evolved? How do you keep up with that? I guess is what I'm asking. Like, you've got the midway now, you've got escape rooms. Don't you have a, what is it, a monster museum? I mean, there's so much more than just a haunted attraction at Netherworld. How do you roll with that? I mean, does that come from you, or did you see other people doing it and be like, we need to do that? I mean, or is it just something you're trying to lead the pack in? Because it sounds like you got pretty much everything down there.
Well, we don't have alcohol. At
Oh, well, there you go.
least I think the customers bring it, but
Oh yeah, yeah, for
both
sure.
in hidden containers and in their bodies. But uh, I we just sort of we've been around so long. We're absolutely inspired by our peers, but a lot of things are just evolutions of what we've been doing. Like for a long, long time, we didn't do food. And food is a thing that people do, I think, based upon their ability. Like, for example, if you're a farm and you have an orchard and you've always had a kitchen, you have food. This is what you do. A lot of people just get food trucks, but I remember, we had to sell water because people are dying. They're very thirsty, and we'd sell water and Coke and stuff like that. But I wanted the smell of popcorn. I felt like that as you exit was something that was of value. And we would get all these food trucks, and the food trucks would be like, oh, it's a $15 taco, and it takes like 10 minutes to make it. And you're like, the line is like here. So we started, okay, well, let's sell hot dogs. But to me, it was all about volume. It's like the haunted house. It was like, okay, what can we sell that people will want, that's hot, that's good, that's fast, that we could turn around? Like drinks. I mean, every time there'd be a food truck, you go to get your drink, and in the back, there's a cooler, and there's like 3 Diet Cokes floating around. There's nothing left. So the amount of water we would go through. I remember in the early days, of food, for example, I didn't realize I could have it delivered. I was going to Costco like every other day in my minivan, and it was like scraping the ground, going over the humps, coming back. But now, we have it delivered in big trucks, and we have all these ice things. But now we're buying more and more fridges, and we're constantly optimizing each thing that there is. And one of the best steps to that is to keep getting more and more good people that are interested to kind of take ownership of certain facets of it. Um, and then when you get good people and they know what to do, you just you let them do it and you check in with them and you support them and you listen to them, and uh, they'll take good care of you. And that's kind of how all these things work. You can't, I mean, back in the day, back in Norcross, before we moved, really, we had a haunted house. There were no escape games. There were not these other things. And the haunted house this is something I always tell people as well. Like a lot of people are getting into this. They're like, oh man, I got to have a laser this and I got to have it that. No, you don't. Focus on the core. Do not waste your time with all this other junk until you really have the core dialed in. If you're trying to do food and escape games and axe throwing, and it's like your first year, it's like you got to focus your attention on what matters, and nothing matters more than the core product. The rest of the stuff will come in time. I've spent years in recent years where our core product is there. Of course, you always need to work on it. It requires constant maintenance, but I spent a lot of time focusing on food. This season, like before season, we spent a lot of time worrying about parking, and we were adding additional lighting. We did a lot of solar lights you can buy, put them all over the place. We just did a lot of work to develop additional parking and have lighting. So you get on these jags where you're working on focusing on infrastructure and growth like that, but your main product, that's the primary focus. The other stuff, like I said, that comes second, but after a while you can work on it.
Well, once you got, like you said, once you have everything dialed in on your core, your attractions where you want it, how has, for you and the industry really, how has escape rooms really, how have they upped the level of haunted attractions or, changed the layout of things?
So escape games, um, we've got a little dinky, 3-minute one. It's just a fun side attraction, but our primary games, I remember when we were back in Norcross before we moved, um, everyone's like, you got to get in escape games. I'm like, no way. I'm a haunted house guy. I want to focus on my haunted house. I don't need to be distracted by these escape games. But when we got into this building that we're in, I mean, our building it's essentially, if you cut it down the middle, actually, more of it is a warehouse, but there's 2 floors of offices. So there were, I don't know, 60 rooms. I don't know. It is a lot of there's a lot of space. And when we were there, we are like, we have the room to do escape games. The rooms, it's there. The infrastructure is present. We just need to, create into this environment. So we decided to go ahead and do them. And let me tell you, escape games are no joke to get going if you want to do them really, because that's the thing. I think a lot of there's many fantastic escape games, but some of the more spectacular ones I've seen were done by haunters because haunters have the tech skill and the art skill and all this. So yeah, we spent a lot of time getting our escape games together. The first couple went really quick, but later ones that took way too long. So uh, they're and the fun thing, I think one of the reasons we like them is it's a way to engage with your patrons year round. Um, you can you can mark it on the light level to say it's like your seasonal events you do. Um, you know, year round you're there. Year round you're keeping offices. Year round you're have a level of PR and stuff like that promoting the games. Every so and also it helps with your year round staff. People can go between build and escape, and it helps with having crew to build as well. Although it's always funny, we'll have staff that works in escape and they also work in build, and it's in summer and you're like way behind like always, and you're like, oh man, we got to get this built, and then they're like, oh, we got games today, and you're like, great, you have games. Ah. You're making money, it's like it's great.
Yeah,
Also,
yeah.
like, my people, I need you to work in the haunted house, So it's a double edged sword, but I mean, I like them.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. We're just now getting into them. We're having some built currently. That's one of the reasons why I asked. Also, I was wondering, For you, since there's no off-season events, like you say you just kind of do the Halloween season, how much do you change your attraction? I mean, I'm sure you probably don't do a whole redesign for the whole thing every year, but what is your thoughts on, okay, well, we need to change this much this year, and how do you decide what areas you're going to change? Even escape rooms, like, well, we've had this one for 5 years, let's change it out, do something different.
Well, the escape game side of it, I think it kind of relates to your population. So there's if you get into the escape game industry, I mean, I've been engaged a little bit. I have just, but we had these jags where we got into it and then you got to focus on these other things. But they'll say after X amount of plays, a game needs to get changed. But we're in Atlanta, Georgia, which is a huge population. So there's a vast quantity of people that are still available to play games that haven't. Um, what we've seen more so is like, well, people will play all the games we have, and they're like, well, do you have any new ones? And then we'll put out a new one, and they'll come back and play that one. But generally, the games continue to have value. I want to say, it's like maybe it's year 7 of our games, and we have not changed any of them. And we've done upgrades. Um, we the first 3 games we built, they didn't have the level of tech that the later ones did, and we went in and did upgrades and like improved like the sound and lighting responses and stuff like that to make them. But we didn't change the game. We just made it a better experience. As far as the haunt goes, since year 1, there's a couple things about Netherworld that make it a little different. Not so much different. I mean, there's many haunts that are like us, but we always wanted to have original stories and themes. We don't use, Pennywise or Saw or Jason, that stuff. So we've always had our own creatures, and many of the things that you will see at Netherworld are things you'll see nowhere else. There might be things that we've had made by special, effects people or things we built in house. Of course, we do have, a lot of the industry things that you would have, the animations you would recognize. But generally, when we have things for a couple of years, they start getting weirder and weirder. And we start changing them into something else entirely. So, like if you will see like our Impaler or our Necromancer, they're completely done as a whole different kind of thing. So, but every year we have a new theme and it's a new story. And it's like a movie in a way, in that I see every year it's a sequel to the previous movie. So it's got to have the vibe of the other one, but it's got to have, you know, that new bit to bring people back. And so that's what we do. So every year the shows have a different name, but they're not like, oh, we don't like knock down the walls. Okay. Uh, it's the story is usually taking place in the same place, but it's, new things are happening there. There's an evolution of a story. So there are completely new scenes that were built, but quite often things happen throughout the entire attraction. Um, I would. It's common where almost every single room is touched in some manner, and that could be because like a giant monster is in this room here, and then we put it over in this room and we change how it looks, but we move this one here, and so it's like it's this constant swapping of pieces and you know visuals and stuff like that. So every year it's that sort of evolution. A good example would be um, the last 2 years. So 2 years ago, we did a show with this giant monster called it was called the Undying Horror, and it's Ubusatha, which is a creature from H.P. Lovecraft mythology, actually Clark Ashton Smith, and it's this creator demiurge monster. So it was like a giant meatball, okay, with tentacles, and these tentacles went up into the sky and they came down, and everywhere they landed, monsters were venting out of them. So this creature was infected with this virus that caused these tentacles to tap into the elemental planes. So this last year it was called Primordial, and it was an elemental theme. So in one section where the tentacles came down, it was a water section. In another section, it was an ice section. Other section was an earth section. Other section was a fire section. So there were all of these elemental creatures, but they were in the old environment. So we did overlays and we changed all the change the actors and some of the big monsters. And so that was sort of how it was changed, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah, for
It's a
sure.
continuation of a story, new name, new icon characters, new situation.
Yeah, so that is I've always wondered that on your level as far as how big you guys are and how the turnaround for changing things and keeping it fresh. Do you think you mentioned the theming or the a different theme, a different storyline every season? Is that important for majority of your customers or your guests? They want to see a different theme, or the typical 16-year-old that's coming from the high school football game that might be going to the haunted house afterwards, or is that geared more toward your hardcore haunt fans?
So I think we all do hundreds of things. And in reality, maybe only 10 matter. But which 10? I don't know. You just do what you do, and then you slowly. It's like when social media came out. So back in the day, there was just radio and billboard and newspapers, and then you start putting money in. It's like you take steps, and then you look back, 10 years, and you've done dramatically things totally in a different way. So for us, at the very beginning of the year, coming up with a new theme and story is the first part of it is what goes out to our production staff. So we say, this is what the story's about. It's about vampires or whatever it's going to be, or grab a topic out of the air. Like years ago, we did one called Blood Night, and so that was about vampires, and they were going to black out the sun, so it would always be dark on the world, and they had this whole plan. So, okay, it's about vampires, so we start making vampire stuff. We start making vampire costumes. We start saying, how can we make animatronics that look like vampires? How can we do stunts that's like a vampire flying at you and look like a vampire? How can we change the music? How can we create some vampire scenes? So it's a production angle. And then it turns also into a marketing angle because every year when the media comes back, what's new this year? Well, it's about vampires. It's called Blood Night. And they're like, cool. It's about them. It's new. And for many, many years, I would always be the icon character personally. So I would be the actual creature and I would speak to the media as the monster, whatever it was. And so that became a thing. But then over the years, I can almost count it back when reality TV came out. The media's like, well, no, we want to talk to you. We don't want to talk to the monster. We want to talk to you as a person. I was like, okay. So then I started being more like, okay, well, I'm gonna take I'll do all the photography of the creatures, stuff like that. One of my actors will be the creature, and I'll talk about the creature. So, but when I'm able to go out to media and I go, well, this year it's about this, and there's this creature, and there's this creature, and it's. And I'll describe all these things you'll see in the show in very florid language. So people are like, this is really cool. But to your point, most people just want to go to a haunted house. So you'd ask most people what happened. I don't know. It was scary. It was dark. There was a chainsaw at the end. It's like, okay, awesome. But people who are really into it do see the changes. I think, and this is a challenge for people like you guys. So you're in a prison, an epic place that will draw people in year after year because it's got such history. It's haunted. It's super cool. But then you're in the box of like what happens in a prison. You know, it's really difficult to kind of change your theme, which is why 28 years ago when we picked Netherworld, the idea was things from the outside penetrating into our world. So there's a related tale, but it can always be very different. So it was the intent at the beginning was not to be incredibly specific. I see a lot of people have themes and stories that are, all about this one character doing this one thing and this one. And it's like, okay, what's next year? What's the next year? It, it it's a but it's more of an exercise to inspire the actors, the production staff to engage the media, to show that there's something different and exciting. Also, after 28 years, it keeps it fun, you know, to come up with new stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And I was going to ask you about that too because I mean we've met on occasion. I remember you came up to. I used to work at for Robert Kirchen's Creature Core, and I remember I think it was in 2015 you came up to our shop, and Bob gave you a tour, and I think it was you and your kids and your wife, and you guys came up, took a tour of the building. Um, and I remember that, and of course I talked to you a handful of times at Transworld. You seem like you really love doing this. You really put that out there. I mean, not even without saying it. And I always tell my crew, it's like, look, we're not curing cancer. We're not building rockets into space. We're building a haunted house. So it's supposed to be fun. How do you keep it fun? And, you know, how do you keep it fun for you and for the crew? I mean, does it come natural for you? It is what you love.
I don't know. I mean, there's times when you feel like it's the same. There's moments. I remember years back, long ago, when you don't have as much of a budget and you're in the beginning years, it's hard to make. It's easy to knock walls down and build new rooms, but it's hard to really make it feel different, right? I remember having these moments where I'm like, okay, it's opening weekend. So, an example. So we have a very large returning staff. Okay, generally speaking, I would say every season, 2/3 of the staff is returning. So on opening weekend, we're able, generally depends on the year, we can open with no new people whatsoever. So, and all the new people are like, we give them tickets and say, you're going to come through the haunted house this weekend and see it, because then you're going to be acting in it. So you want to kind of get the vibe of it. So there's been times where it's like, you know, we open, this is more so long ago, and same, it's like, hey, just another night in last year. It's been like, 10 months or whatever, but hey, all the same people, everything's the same. When you go and you're like, it's like we were last year, open again. But it doesn't feel that way so much anymore because I don't know. Every year there seems to be bigger changes just because the building we have allows it, and we're into so many more things. The midway is always different. There's new displays. But yeah, there's definitely moments of sameness where you're like, here, I'm just doing it again. But I think the newness is fun, but it's also the seasonality of it. I think you can really wear yourself out if you do events all the time. Like if you're doing, halfway to Halloween, it's like, you're also messing up your ability to change things dramatically because you have to finish up your builds real fast to meet these other deadlines. Um, so we, we, we definitely want to change it up so it's fun for us too. Um, that's part of it. Another thing, a couple years ago, I got into tiki, like tiki drinks, tiki bars, stuff like that. We have a really cool home bar in our basement. Really cool. It's got animated stuff and it's really fun. We're big into the tiki world. We got way into tiki. And so then all of a sudden, like we did a tiki escape game. So I like burned myself out from tiki for a while. I'm like, man, I burned out tiki. Oh, but this haunted house stuff is cool again. So, you got to jump to different things once in a while to make it interesting.
Yeah, keeping it fresh. Yeah, that makes sense. So with Transworld coming up, I love going to Transworld every year. It's just it's just a fun thing to do. Gets us out of here for a while. What are your plans for there? You got some. You going to be on some panels doing the seminars and everything?
Oh boy, so many.
Yeah,
Oh,
I've taken a few of yours for sure.
yeah, I got a bunch. It's I've for about 10 years I did them all. Like I did them all. Like I designed them and did them for Transworld, and then um, when I was going to move locations, I went to Jen and I gave her a year's warning, and I was like, I'm not going to be able to do the seminars because I'm going to be moving my haunted house in 22 days. So I work with her, and she's learned enormously, and she's got a great support staff. So now they do them, but I still assist a lot. So I will help Transworld do what I can. So I end up naming a lot and helping them figuring stuff out. But invariably, in the 11th hour, you end up getting a lot of seminars that you got to help with. So I think I'm doing. I'm involved in some manner with about 7 different things. Um, Many of them are panels, just sort of moderating panels and things of that nature. But yeah, I'm going to be. I don't know. I guess I'll get to buy stuff. We'll see. I'm going to be in seminars all the time.
So, how important is it for someone that's new into um, into haunted houses if they're going to start running one or um, trying to maybe get one started? In Ohio, they're everywhere. I'm not sure about Georgia, but they're all over here. How important is it to get out to these conventions, take these seminars, see what people have, and what's new in the industry every year at trade shows like Transworld?
I think it's essential, primarily from the standpoint of best practices. Um, Honestly, I'd like to see more haunts doing things that were radically different from each other. I'm much more excited when they're not all. Unfortunately, you get into trends where people they go to other people's haunts and they start doing ones like them because they think that's what they're supposed to do. And I don't know. I'm definitely intrigued by pure creativity. I want to see stuff that's different. But when you're talking best practices like safety, like business, like marketing, like staff, how to pay people correctly, all the things to do correctly, that's stuff you need to learn, and those stuff you don't need to be creative with with how you pay your staff. You know what I mean? You need to do things, to where you don't get in trouble with the IRS, stuff like that. So I think, and unfortunately, when you go, a lot of times the business seminars are the ones about things of that nature are the things that people they want to go to the fun classes about, the art projects or the all that stuff, scaring people because that's why we're in it. I mean, that's another thing that always kind of blows my mind is that there is a huge variety of people drawn to this, and I personally, in most years, when I can, and I used to always interview every single person that worked at Netherworld as part of the process. And I'm always like, kind of, why are you here? Like, and some people are like, they just like to scare people. They've worked in haunted house. Some people are theatrical actors. Some people are into cosplay. Some people, they're, and it's always like you talk to someone for like, 10 minutes, you're like, who are you? And you finally go, oh, Rocky Horror. Check the box. You got to get a sense of what they're about, but they're somehow they're all drawn to it. And it's the same thing with people who build haunted houses. I think it's a madness. It's an insanity that we have a desire to create an environment. It's like a freaking bird building a bird nest. You just can't get away. It's a compulsion. And even if people are very different, they share this desire to have this creative outlet to create this weird environment and to work in this. And so it's fun to see that. But I think I love going to haunts and being inspired. You can learn something from every single haunt you ever go to. The day you think you got it figured out, you're full. There's always something new to learn. And there's always, you can go to some haunt that's been around 2 years and you get slapped in the face like, man, they are really efficient with how they're doing their water coolers, and you're like, "That's a great idea. I'm going to do it that way," or whatever it is, or some great thing to motivate actors or something like that. So, um, going to the shows, they get you the opportunity to meet, you know, people who've been in the trenches. You can get those ideas. You can learn about all the horrible things. There's a seminar. I think Scott Simmons is doing it, and it's about like all the things that have happened that were the wrong decisions or something like that. Like he's literally going to lay out, I shouldn't have done that, and I shouldn't have done that, and I shouldn't have, like that's valuable stuff, you know, all the mistakes. So yeah, absolutely go learn best practices. Do get inspired. Um, but I like to tell new haunters one thing in particular is like, unless you're in an area that's underserved, like there's no haunts, need to come up with an angle that makes you unique. Because if you have just another haunted house because you have the compulsion to create it, but it's not doesn't have something unique or some kind of special thing behind it to back it, and it's just like the others, your chances of success are slim, even though you're compelled. So you want to say follow your dream, yes, follow your dream, but don't do it if your dream is not, you need to make sure you can get it right, because it's really, really hard to open a haunted house, especially now. And you really got to have your ducks in a row for sure.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. Um, yeah, I was kind of, told coming in that, safety is always number one, and the creative part of it was always, way toward the end, it's important, and of course, but like you said, it was, you got to make sure your business is straight. People are going to be safe, all that stuff before you get to the creative part of it. So that is good advice. On the creative end of it, one last question for you, and I know you're probably busy, you got to get going, but I do appreciate you hanging out with us today.
Oh,
When
I
you
thought
go,
this was a 3 hour thing. Okay, cool.
well, it can be as long as you want, man. So when you go to Transworld or wherever, I know IAPA's another big one that people have been hitting up a lot. When you see something, I mean, do you go not only just to reconnect with people, but just to see that next really cool thing that either might inspire you or see that thing where you're like, "Ah, yeah, I'm getting that, taking that home, or I'm going to order one of those when you go to these trade shows."
Oh, absolutely. There are so many really amazingly creative people in this industry. You it When you've seen it for a long time, you know how it is. You get a little jaded. You're like, oh, yeah, I've seen that, I've seen that, I've seen that, and you start talking to all the old folks, and the old folks. Yeah, we're in our walkers going around, but you always want to see, like, what did you see that's new? What's the cool new thing? And we're all like, and it could be something dumb like, this one vendor up in the corner of his booth, he's got this little thing. It's like it does this thing. It's really cool. I've never seen that, and even that's kind of fun when you can see it. But a lot of times, it's the audience. I mean, a lot of people there are new to the industry, and a lot of people are in a growth mode, and they have never been able to acquire these things, so they're just starting off. But yeah, you occasionally see stuff, and I'm pretty bad about it, because sometimes I'll see things that are like, they're not really good for the haunted house, but I want it, so I'll just take it home and put it in my house. But I can't just have something. Everything has to be like a tool. So, like, if I buy something for my house, I'll ultimately take it out of my house and I'll put it in the haunted house for a season. I'll pull it back out again. So, um, but it is still like Christmas to come and to go down and unwrap the presents, and to go rushing down into the dark zone to see what's going to be there. But but it's also all the people. You see all these people, and you talk. Sometimes you can't get 30 feet in an hour because you're just talking to all your friends. So it's just a great time.
I love when the orders start coming in. If you order something there and I ordered this mask or I ordered this prop, and then next thing you know, it's like, hey, you got a package. You go run, like you said, just like at Christmas, you go running up, slicing it open. What is it? That's great stuff.
Yeah. Or on the converse, where you're like, where the freak is it? Where's my thing?
Yeah. Yes.
You're
Yeah.
like,
Exactly.
my thing. Drives you crazy.
Yeah. Well, listen, Ben, I appreciate you joining us here. I am going to be in your area later on in the year, closer to summer. I'd like to, say, hey, if you're in the neighborhood or whatever, I'd love to come and play your escape games. I've been trying to get out and do more of those since we're trying to get into that world. But thank you very much for coming by, or, joining us via the Zoom link or what have you. But I appreciate you taking time out of the day to come and, sit with us and give us your expertise, and very grateful, because a lot of people look up to you, and it means a lot. So thanks so much.
Thanks for having me. It's always fun to talk shop with people, and
Oh yeah,
what better thing to do on a cold January day?
exactly.
Other than go to one and work on one. So
Yeah,
I got to
absolutely.
play hooky for a couple hours. So,
You got to play what?
I got to play hooky from working. So I was like,
Oh, well, there you
I
go.
gotta leave. I gotta leave early because I gotta do a
Yeah.
podcast because
That's what I said. I'm like, yeah, I got to go do this thing.
yeah.
Well, thanks, man. And you take care, and we will see you in St. Louis, okay?
Absolutely. We'll see you later.
Thank you.